Welcome once again. This is the Close the Deal show with Terrence McCray. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I would like to talk to you about something very important, something that has impact our entire world, and that's based on leaders. We have all different types of leaders. In this world, we've had leaders like Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Mao Zedong, and so many type of people that have impacted the world like Mother Teresa. And what I want to talk about is business leaders. I'm talking about people like Richard Branson, Jack Ma, Sheryl Sandberg, Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey. These great people work with great people. And today I have someone that is a business leader, well renowned in his community, but most importantly, a significant impact in a global company, a major company that has changed the face on how not we just do business, but who we connect with and how we close the right deal and the type of people we want to work with professionally. I'm talking about a man that not only do I admire, but I had the opportunity, to do a workshop with. Someone who has actually, for a company that I have a profile with, made my profile to an all-star level. So ladies and gentlemen, viewers of the Close the Deal show, I would like to introduce you a new up-and-coming business leader, and his name is Stephen Gundy.
Thanks, Terrence. I appreciate you having me. And there's quite a degree of separation between me and the people you mentioned, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's fun to be here.
Definitely. So, Mr. Gundy, please tell the viewers a little bit about your background.
Sure. I mean, I had a pretty normal background. I grew up in the Midwest. I'm originally from Chicago. I grew up about 30 minutes north of the city. Upper middle class, suburban kind of upbringing. Moved around a little bit, but largely in the same community. I'd say my childhood was fairly normal. Didn't have a ton of adversity to deal with, so I feel very fortunate in that circumstance. My father did pass away when I was 13 years old, so I'd say that was a big kind of inflection point between, I think, who I am today and, who I was, or the person that I was going to be at 12 years old, and I think that type of thing changes an individual. But much of which I think is for the better, has made me certainly stronger. Ended up graduating from high school. I started going to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, kind of in the middle of the state. Ended up transferring to the University of Colorado and went there because I had a few high school friends that were there, visited, just struck me as a place that I needed to be, and really checked some boxes that I thought was missing in my current education. So transitioned and went to the University of Colorado. I majored in economics. I graduated in 2004. And like most college students, or like many college students, I didn't really feel purpose-driven. I didn't have a clear understanding as to what I wanted to be when I grew up. I still was kind of searching for my own personal fit in the world. And there were things I knew I was good at, and I was good at talking with people. And so like many individuals, they often defer to what their parents were. So their parents are lawyers, so they end up going to law school and being lawyers themselves, or they're doctors, or they are, firemen, pick any profession. And your parents have a huge influence as to who you will be as an adult. And so that largely was very important for me, or a big influence point, and I ended up going into commercial real estate as a salesperson because my stepfather has been involved in commercial real estate all his life in the Chicagoland area. So I worked for a fairly mid-sized brokerage, and it was a nice crash course education in sales. But I wasn't super passionate about it. I thought it was just a way to kind of jump off. During that time, I was fortunate enough to meet my now wife. So that was fortuitous that happened, and got to experience what was the Great Recession. So the real estate market was one of the hardest hit areas during the Great Recession, and really everything came to a standstill when it came to commercial real estate transactions. So ended up moving to another company, did some analysis for them, and during my journey and through my wife was able to make a number of friends, one of which was working at my now current company, LinkedIn. And so in my capacity at this company doing commercial real estate, LinkedIn was a burgeoning startup in Silicon Valley, and they had just opened an office in Chicago. And after about a year or so, they were really kind of busting at the seams at the office that they were currently in, and spoke to my friend, and I said, hey, would love to represent LinkedIn to find them their next office space in Chicago. And he said, well, I don't know if we're ready yet. But then about 6 months later, he called me up and he said, you know what, that conversation we were having, I think we're ready to find a space. So ended up finding LinkedIn a space in another Chicago office building, which it's rewarding. They are still in today. They're in a different space, but same building. So kind of fun having a fingerprint on the early days and what the company is now. And throughout that process, got to deal with a lot of individuals at LinkedIn that I really found rewarding. And at the end of the process, they ended up, the same person reached out to me. And we were talking casually, and he said, do you like what you're doing right now? And I said, it's fine. Like, I'm enjoying the education. I don't know if I'm super passionate about real estate, but like, it's nice. I enjoy these aspects. He's like, well, you know, we're growing our sales team. I think you might be really good here. And if you're interested, we'd love to set you up with another colleague on my team for an interview. And at first I was like, I don't know. This is such a vast departure from what I'm doing today. So I said, well, let me think about it. And ultimately, I came to my senses a couple of months later, called him back up and said, hey, I would really welcome the opportunity to talk to your colleague and interview for a position at LinkedIn. This was when we were LinkedIn was probably 600 employees at the time. We're 11,000 now. And a couple months later, a position opened, ended up interviewing. Everything went well, and was offered a position and have been there ever since.
So would you say that your stepfather had an impact in your career?
I think my stepfather had an impact in my jumping off point, in the fact that I really didn't have a good understanding as to what I wanted to be, but helped me realize that while real estate wasn't the thing I ultimately was passionate about, it was something I thought was important to learn about, so he was an influence in gaining an education there. But also made me realize that I really, at its core, like talking to people. And sales, at its simplest sense, is just talking to people and hopefully solving problems that they can't solve on their own. And so I think through that discovery process led me to my current profession, which is enterprise sales professional.
Okay. I have a lot of viewers that are small business owners as well as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You know, and you working at LinkedIn, how could a small business owner improve its profile in its business through LinkedIn?
Sure. So I'll separate the two questions of how does an individual improve their profile, and then how would I think LinkedIn would help a small business owner? Because I think the profile question is fairly straightforward. The other one has some more nuance to it because, as you know, LinkedIn isn't the only social media site out there.
Correct.
But at the same time, in the same vein, I think social media is extraordinarily important to a small business owner and entrepreneur. So I'll take the first part of the question and then kind of address the second part. So from a profile, the simplest thing is to have a picture. So if you want to have an engaging profile, make sure that the picture that you have on LinkedIn is something that you would consider professional. So it could be just you standing against a plain wall and taking a selfie of yourself. But I've seen a lot of like strange photos on LinkedIn, and that's fine if you want to be creative, but I think it doesn't necessarily position yourself as the professional that you aspire to be, depending on the industry that you're in. If you're a more creative individual, having something more creative as a headshot certainly is warranted, but it's important to keep that context. But I think the other part is LinkedIn is really good, or a really good opportunity to tell people about who you are as a professional and moreover, what you aspire to be and how you want to help people in your current professional capacity. And so aside from highlighting your background experience, if you went to college, where you went to college, if your past jobs. So not everything, there's a number of jobs that aren't on my LinkedIn profile that I don't think are relevant to who I am today. So it doesn't need to be everything, but it just basically gives you a background, some color as to who you are and the expertise that you've built over the years. And then, ultimately, like what you aspire to be. That if I were to meet you on the street and talk to you about your business, your LinkedIn profile should almost be a teaser for some of the things that I should know about you, or you would want me to know about you. We're really good at what's called search engine optimization, and so when you look up your name on Google, the largest site in the world, LinkedIn hopefully should be one of the first things that pop up, and that's really important for an entrepreneur. And so to have that content, I think, is beneficial in telling the world who you are.
Wonderful to hear. Good to know. One of the things that I'm amazed by LinkedIn is the fact that the idea of acknowledging someone getting a new position and acknowledging him on his position for a duration of 2 years, and you call that an anniversary.
Sure.
Who came up with that?
You know what? I don't know specifically who came up with that. LinkedIn's an interesting site in the fact that we are a consumer website. So we have over 500 million members throughout the world, but we have a very robust enterprise technology company built upon top of that. We have over 60,000 customers in a number of our business lines. So LinkedIn is always a mix of things that are really engaging for the user and what we hope is interesting. Work is really important. It takes up so much of our lives, and so to acknowledge the commitment and the time and duration that people have been in a job, I think, is really important. And so there's birthdays and regular anniversaries, and so we thought a work anniversary was also appropriate.
Well, one of the things LinkedIn mission statement says is connect the world's professionals to make them productive and successful. Now, you do a lot of traveling for your job position, creating solutions to connect enterprises. When you find yourself with another team in another country, what solutions do you create to help them expand LinkedIn?
So I think it ultimately comes down to not what are LinkedIn's capabilities,
Okay.
but moreover, people buy things. So I'm in sales, and I firmly believe that someone paying you for something, is simply the result of you being able to prove that you can solve a problem or pain point of theirs that they can't solve on their own, or that you can solve it faster and less in a less costly manner than they can solve themselves. And so, as any good sales professional will tell you, I think understanding the individual's company problems or problem that they're looking for you to address is of utmost importance. And I'm not talking about problems specific to LinkedIn. I'm talking about problems that, regardless if LinkedIn existed, they would still have, or goals that the company or individual has that, regardless if LinkedIn existed, they would still say, these are my problems, or this is what I'm looking to achieve. And then I try to figure out what LinkedIn assets, whether it's a solution or whether it's something else that we can partner with them on, that will help them either solve the problem or move them closer towards the goal in a manner that they couldn't do on their own. And so that's the way that I really try to look at it.
Could you give a small business owner or an entrepreneur that's viewing this show an example on how you come up with a solution so that when they find themselves trying to explain to an investor, right, how they're able to identify their problem, but most importantly, solve that solution?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing for any business is customers. And so I think LinkedIn in particular is good for many businesses for what we call demand or lead generation. So who on LinkedIn may be interested in my product or service? And that applies very well to, larger or, even, small businesses, but in more of a business to business context. Many of your viewers may be more consumer driven. They may own a restaurant, or they may have a non kind of professional oriented business. And so I think when it comes to LinkedIn, First of all, I think having a profile so that investors can research about you and that you have an opportunity to tell the world the narrative that you want them to understand or that you want to convey. Super important. But I also think that this is where other social media sites can come into play, where it is creating demand for your business. I think that's ultimately the most value that social media companies in general can contribute to a small business owner, is connecting them with customers, helping them build a coalition of devoted customers, and that hopefully helps them expand their business or at least make it self-sustaining.
Now I can see why you're in the position that you're in. You know, when I had the opportunity to see you on the Silicon Valley tour and meet your boss, Jeff Weiner, and several other CEOs throughout the world, it allowed me to understand why you put certain people in certain positions, whether you're a CEO, a COO, or a CFO, or you're in senior management. Your leadership skills clearly states why you're in the position you're in and moving forward, okay? And I see you further down the line in years to come as an actual CEO. So my question to you is, what biggest challenge have you overcome recently?
So I think it's a fairly broad question, and I appreciate your vote of confidence. Jeff is an aspirational leader. I was actually very jealous of your Silicon Valley tour. You got to meet like all of these aspirational business leaders. I think you met Sheryl Sandberg.
Correct.
And like, yeah, I mean, like you go
Beautiful
incredible woman. List of
Beautiful.
individuals.
Yeah. Very, very down to earth, very sweet woman too.
Yeah, I think that for any professional way, you pick out where you have exposure to those types of aspirational individuals, and then I'll get to your question about like what are some of the biggest hurdles that you've gotten over. Is that just taking little pieces that you find you can relate to, and so the way that Jeff talks about certain things or the way that he thinks about the world, I think you can take pieces of that and replicate it. And use it as your own. I think largely my style is just an amalgamation, basically a mixture of a bunch of little things that I saw from other professionals that I really respected and thought like, wow, that's awesome. They're amazing at that. I wonder if I could try to be that good at that thing. And take little pieces that ultimately became like my style or the way that I try to see the world or think about things. And so Jeff has been an incredible inspiration of that. I have very limited direct exposure. In fact, your meeting was like the first time I've been in a room with him. So it was just as exciting for me as it was for you. Now getting to your question, as far as like what is one of the biggest hurdles I've gotten over? Any professional, if they're pushing themselves, is going to experience disappointment. So there's the way that you see yourself and what you believe that you deserve. And then there's the things that actually come to you. And those aren't always equal. So I may think of myself as one way, and the world sees me a different way, and that can lead to a disconnect and can lead to disappointment. Or let's say you're working, there was a deal that I was working on a couple of years ago. There was a ton of visibility. A lot of our executives were involved, and it failed. It didn't pan out at all. But I think that to quickly reassess and understand why you failed and then continue to push forward is the key to a really successful individual, no matter whether they are working at a Fortune 500 company or they're a small business owner. There's a great book, I forget the author off the top of my head, called Grit. And it's all about her studies into the world and concept of grit, and how if you were to optimize, if you were to focus on one asset that people on your team have, it would be to anchor towards people that were grittier, that could move through adversity and come out the other end much stronger. And so there are numerous failures that I've experienced in my professional life. And there's been some sure misses with personally, that things I could handle better. But I think the most important thing is that I've learned, experienced the pain, and hopefully learned to not repeat it in the future.
Well, Jeff, I love having you on the show. And I hope that my viewers are not only paying very close attention to what to what Stephen has said. Excuse me, I'm thinking of,
Yeah,
I'm thinking of your actual boss for whatever reason.
He is a influential individual.
It's just his name is just sticking to my tongue, but excuse me. Anyway, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show. You know, sharing your input, sharing your insight, as well as your wisdom. You know, I think that the viewers of the Bay Area will get a full understanding actually how to make certain type of decisions. And I truly am thankful for having you on the show.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you for the experience.
Definitely. And what I want the viewers to understand is clearly, if you want to be a leader and you're in business, then you have to be a good listener, most importantly. You have to be very humble. And leadership in itself is defined as a process of social influence. And it doesn't just start overnight. It's something that you learn early on in the household. How to be a good leader from your parents. Stephen said earlier that he learned a lot from his parents, whether it was his stepfather or his mother. And through that influence, he made sure that he associated with the right people. See, this is how we make the right deals on the Close the Deal show, by connecting ourselves with people that are a social influence. And Stephen Gundy, he's not only a social influence, but he's a solution for a lot of companies that's trying to make a connection in this business world. This is why he's a leader, and this is why he's an example of what leadership is. And he takes that very hard. This is why he studied his craft, but most importantly, this is how he maximizes his craft in order to be that great leader. Tune in. Until next time, the Close the Deal show is here to share more insight on business leaders, but most importantly, how to be a leader. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.